I now welcome representatives from Mercedes-Benz Australia Pacific. I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses and evidence has been provided to you. For the Hansard record, will you please state your full names and the capacities in which you appear today?
My name is Horst von Senden and I'm the CEO of Mercedes-Benz Australia Pacific.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Nomikos and I'm the Director of Customer Management, Retail Network Development and Strategy at Mercedes-Benz Australia.
I now invite you to make a short opening statement, and at the conclusion of your remarks, Senator O'Neill will commence questioning. Thank you. And I understand Senator Pratt, who is the chair, is just joining us now. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I had trouble signing in, and thank you, Senator McGrath.
No problem.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you also for the opportunity to speak with you all today on behalf of Mercedes-Benz Australia. Mercedes-Benz Australia was established in 1958. Currently, our passenger car network has 53 dealerships across 64 dealership locations in each state and territory, including a strong presence in regional areas. In fact, 27 of our 53 dealers are in rural and regional areas, and 30 of our 53 dealers have been part of our network for more than 10 years. The success of Mercedes-Benz Australia is closely linked to the success of our dealer network. We are proud to operate a highly performing and successful dealer network. Our dealers consistently told us via anonymous satisfaction survey that they are highly satisfied. They are vital to ensuring the continued success and sustainability of the Mercedes-Benz brand in Australia. We have listened to and read submissions made by others to this inquiry and are grateful for the opportunity to discuss with you how our new agency model represents a better way to service Australian customers than the traditional licensed dealer model that we and most other manufacturers currently operate under. In doing so, we hope to provide clarity on some aspects of our proposed model that appear to have caused concern. Our new model, called Retail of the Future, has been designed in collaboration and consultation with our dealer network. It is therefore bespoke to Mercedes-Benz and different from other models being considered and or introduced by other manufacturers. As with all dealership agreements, agency or licensed, it will be entirely governed by the Franchising Code of Conduct and the Competition and Consumer Act. We began discussing our new agency model with our dealers in 2017. During its development, we have actively considered the input and the views of our dealers, our National Dealer Council and its dedicated subcommittee, and external stakeholders such as the AADA and the department. In December 2019, we gave our passenger car dealers formal notice that the agency model would be introduced with an indicative commencement date. We then confirmed by written notice in February 2020 a commencement date of January 1st, 2022. No Mercedes-Benz dealer will have their dealer agreement terminated. When the current term or their dealer agreement ends, all 53 dealers will be offered a code-compliant agency agreement. To briefly summarize the benefits of our agency model for dealers, it will only apply to new passenger car sales, second-hand cars, servicing, parts sales, finance and insurance, which together account for approximately 70% of dealer profitability, will not be subject to the agency agreement. No dealer will be required to undertake any significant capital expenditure or relocation in order to operate as an agent. Mercedes-Benz will fund all inventory of new passenger cars. Dealers will no longer be responsible for that cost. The model will ensure a more equitable system for regional dealers by guaranteeing access to all vehicles Australia-wide, thereby moving a significant amount of economic activity back to regional communities. We are confident that the average profitability of dealer business across the network will be maintained under the new model and have undertaken modelling to verify this. The relationship between manufacturers and dealers are long-term. We have always negotiated with them in good faith. These relationships and the wider car industry must endure changing customer demands and economic conditions. There must be flexibility for manufacturers to adjust the way they operate and adapt their arrangements with dealers to meet market challenges. We believe that the current law, as recently amended, allows this to occur whilst adequately protecting dealers. We believe our model will help future-proof the business of both Mercedes-Benz and our dealers, particularly those in regional communities, while providing consumers with the change they want. And that brings me to the last point in this opening statement about our new business model. Australian consumers are at the heart of the initiative, and we firmly believe they will benefit under the Retail of the Future model. It will increase transparency and trust with our customers, shifting the experience from a price-centric approach to a service-based one. Our research tells us 60% of customers would prefer a haggle-free purchasing experience, 74% find the negotiation process difficult and wish there was a better way, and 65% find the overall purchase process mistrustful and lacking transparency. Control will be placed in the hand of the consumer by giving them access to the full range of Mercedes-Benz cars, regardless of their postcode, guaranteeing them a single price and removing the need to haggle. Rural and regional-based customers in particular will have a better and fairer buying experience. In conclusion, we believe our new agency model is a win for the customer and a win for our dealers, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Senator O'Neill, do kick off.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your submission, and thank you for coming to answer questions here in the Senate today. I am very pleased to hear your interest in regional and rural Australia, because so often it is overlooked in so many parts of government and business. Can I just go to a problem that I've become aware of? I understand it happened about 2 years ago, and I believe it involved getting Mercedes-Benz vans certified here in Australia. Are you aware of this issue?
To be honest, I'm not aware of this issue because we have prepared basically on the car side, and my main responsibility, whilst I'm the CEO, is mainly the car business, but I'm happy to take that on notice and provide you with the information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming prepared for the nature of the questions. I'm just trying to establish what sort of a relationship you actually have with your dealers, because, of course, when we step out of the house, we always try to put our best foot forward, and I'm sure that you are trying to put on the record what Mercedes-Benz is doing that's right. But I understand that there has been a problem, and I'd be surprised if either yourself or Mr Nomikos didn't have general knowledge of this problem, seeing as I'm a senator not in the industry and I know about it. So if you can give your answers in general terms and then take any detail on notice, I would appreciate that. Yep. So are you aware of this issue about Mercedes-Benz vans not being certified in Australia?
Yeah, there was an issue. I'm aware of that, yes.
Right. And according to reports, I understand that Mercedes-Benz sold dealers vans which were not certified to be driven in Australia. Is that correct?
That I'm not 100% sure. That I would need to verify and report back to you.
Was there a problem with the roadworthiness and compliance generally with these vans, and Mercedes-Benz delivered them and the dealers got stuck with them?
It was a problem with the software, as far as I recall, which then needed to be rectified, and as a result of that, the homologation was somehow not going through. But as I said, I'm happy to provide the details because I don't have them with me.
Okay, so there was a delay in the time in which they were fixed in whatever way was required in order for them to be certified as fit for roadworthiness in Australia. How long did it take roughly for them to be certified in Australia from when they were actually sold to the dealers who had to hold them as stock?
Senator, unfortunately, I don't have those details, and I don't want to guess here. So, if you allow me to provide you the details.
From my reading of the documentation in the public place, it was around about 2 years. Does that sound approximately right?
Sorry, I don't know.
So it's a matter of a public record from report now that it was a period of roughly 2 years or even longer for some. This was a problem for your dealers. My understanding is they asked for Mercedes-Benz to take those vans back so they weren't sitting with stock that was ageing on their car lot, which seems, well, certainly you would, if you couldn't sell it, you would want to return it to the person who's providing it to you, especially if you're in a long-term relationship, as you've described. Did you offer to take those vans back when it was found that they were not able to be sold by the dealers?
Let me briefly clarify. We obviously have a specific way of operating our businesses, and whilst I'm the CEO, our managing director for vans reports directly into the van division in our mother company in Germany. So the negotiations between the retailer network and our van division happened there, and I was not involved, and that's the reason why I can't give you a clear and straight answer and need to basically come back to you on that.
Right, and that's because Australia doesn't make any cars anymore, so we rely on imports. And the relationship that our customers have can't be with Australian companies because there is no longer a car manufacturing industry. So we rely on relationships with overseas manufacturers, and all of our car dealerships rely on supply from overseas manufacturers who are very big multinational companies. And that's why it matters that Australian consumers are protected from other countries and other companies who reside in other countries who might want to act in the Australian market in ways that are not in the Australian people's interests. Could you take on notice how many dealers actually asked for these Mercedes-Benz vans to be taken back so that they didn't have to hold the stock that they'd purchased, which was unsaleable? Did you offer to take any of those vans back? And could you give me some explanation, given what emerged about the lack of roadworthiness at the point of sale to the dealer network? What was the rationale for undertaking that action? And do you believe it was an ethical business practice?
We'll take that on notice.
Thank you. Now, to matters that I'm sure that you will be prepared for, Mr. von Sanden. This year, Mercedes-Benz announced that it would be moving from the franchise-based retail model to an agency-based set-price model as soon as 1 January 22. In fact, in your opening evidence, you indicate you let the dealers know that in December 2019 that you were thinking about making this change. Pretty quickly after, in February 2020, you advised them of a start date of 1 January 22. So that's correct. Could you please describe to the committee what made you change your model from a franchising model to an agency model in the Australian market?
Yeah. Look, it is mainly consumer driven. We, as I outlined in my opening statements, we have evidence that whilst we enjoy as a brand and also with our professional retailer network a very high customer satisfaction, that there are certain elements which are seen as maybe not ideal. And one of that was the process of haggling, of basically negotiating prices, and that was seen as a lack of transparency and lack of trust experience. Our global strategy is often also, besides many other parts, described as a best customer experience strategy. So we do everything possible to provide our customers with the best experience of our brand, because that is what makes them loyal and come back to us. And our belief is that, firstly, the agency model or our Retail of the Future model will provide that increased transparency, haggle-free experience, best prices available in the marketplace. And in addition to that, it will give a massive advantage to our rural dealers, because we as Mercedes-Benz have a long history of a strong representation in rural areas, much greater than our direct competition, because we care about people in rural areas and they lacked, of course, sometimes the opportunities. They had to buy their stock, and of course, due to their size, they could not stock as many vehicles as city dealers can. And if a customer, for example, came in and was asking or looking for one specific model in one specific color or equipment level, they couldn't find it there. And that meant that a lot of the rural customers who actually would have loved to be loyal to their local dealer were forced to go and look around in the city whether they would find this vehicle there. And in the future model, the rural dealer has access to every vehicle that is in the country. So if the customer happens to look for a specific car that is not in this dealer's stock, he can check it up in the IT system and can immediately basically make that sale happen and doesn't lose his loyal local customer to a city dealer.
Thank you for your explanation of what you believe will happen. The concept of haggling versus fixed price is really at the heart of this model. We had evidence a little earlier from Mr. Blackhall talking about how it was impossible in the Western Sydney context to get a sale unless there was the opportunity for some haggling. I mean, that's a word with sort of negative connotations. It's also really pushing competition, intra-brand competition, to make sure that you get the very best price. So if you go to Mercedes-Benz at Hornsby or you go to Mercedes-Benz in Campbelltown as a city driver, you would certainly have the opportunity to then compare prices, and seeing as it's quite a large purchase, you could create tension and pressure and get a discounted price. Once your retail of the future model is established, that will no longer be the case, because there will be a fixed price for that vehicle and there will be no room for the dealer to negotiate, and therefore no intra-brand competition. Is that fair to say it that way, Mr. Sand?
That is fair to say, but there is a few important aspects to this. Firstly, the main competition, even in our luxury segment, happens not intra-brand but interbrand. We are proud to build fantastic vehicles, but there's other players in the market who build fantastic vehicles as well. So the competition will not be less aggressive, and I think you had evidence today about the competitiveness of the Australian market in general. So,
and its profitability as well.
Yes, correct. The other aspect...
So we're both getting a good deal there.
Yes.
Right.
The other aspect is that we're not talking about a set price all the time. We will not escape the mechanisms of life cycle management. In other words, there will be deals available centrally from us if, for example, there are run-out campaigns. So the customers still have access to special deals, but even if they buy a vehicle which is not in such a special offer, they can be sure that it's a market attractive price, because otherwise we will lose market share. And we have very ambitious growth plans for the future. And certainly the last thing we want is losing market share in, for us, a very extremely successful market.
Yes, Mr. Nomikos.
If I could just add, Senator, in regarding to your question, what you referred to as the intra-brand competition, so between a Mercedes-Benz dealer and another, we strongly believe that price is only one factor of intra-brand competition. There are many other elements which we all experience in what we consume every day, which is all about the service. So we feel strongly that the so-called intra-brand competition will continue to exist. It'll simply move more to focus on the things that we feel are important and our customers tell us are important, which is the level of service, the customer experience, and the local engagements that a dealer does within the area. If I can answer your second question, perhaps, regarding the haggling, we have done research because up until the time we did the research, there was a lot of hearsay about who likes and who doesn't like haggling. Again, going back to the research results, which we're happy to share with you.
Thank you. I would very much appreciate that.
Happy to do so. We have seen that the majority of customers do not like the haggling experience. They feel less comfortable. They are far less experienced at haggling than many, obviously, who they're haggling with. So they actually tell us that they do not like the process. Yes, there are absolutely some, and you'll see that in the research, that love that experience and absolutely have even said to us directly, we will leave your brand, but this is a very, very small part. So we feel that the majority that like it will actually obviously continue to buy, plus it'll give us the ability to attract those that perhaps are currently buying other brands to actually come to our brand.
But Mr. Nomikos, if I didn't like haggling, I could go to your Mercedes-Benz dealer and just say, I'm happy to pay full price now, thank you very much. I mean,
that is correct.
But, so people have that choice already in the current model.
They do have that choice, but it's almost the so-called remorse of getting that good deal still very much exists. So even those customers that don't enjoy the process, and you maybe say full price, yeah, again, based on the research, which we will share with you, they have told us often they feel the situation in which they're not getting the best price. However, they just don't like it, so they don't negotiate.
It was put to us this morning that fixed pricing has been embedded in a number of markets across the world. Mr. David Blackhall indicated he'd done extensive research into the area, and he said that in no context had anyone solved the two-transaction challenge. We haven't spoken about that yet, but it's the trade-in of the vehicle and the management of that process, I'm assuming. Do you want to explain to me how you're going to solve what he called the two-transaction challenge?
Yeah, look, Senator, this is one of the key negotiation points we're working with our retailers at the moment to get this process right. And it has not been finalized, but we certainly have taken on notice the input from our retailer network, and we're working on a model how we can jointly manage the trade-in process in a transparent and professional way.
So that part of the puzzle is not fixed up in the retail of the future model?
It will be part of it, but we still have some time before implementation. Our plan at the moment is to at least 6 months before implementation have the final concept on a draft contract to share it with our retailers, but before that we will share every detail. So we're not quite there yet, but we're very close.
Have you done any research on the profile of people who are the non-hagglers? Are they still keen on not haggling if they have to sell their car privately and they can't trade it in?
Customers today, from our own data that we see through our retail organization, there is roughly about 40 to 45% that actually have trade-ins. So there's a significant portion of customers that don't trade in or simply don't trade in at our retailers. So ultimately, it's again the customer that decides whether they wish to do the trade-in through our retail organization or they simply wish to sell their car privately on any other platform such as Gumtree, eBay, or even car sales. That is again entirely the customer's decision.
That would change a lot about the warranty in the second-hand car dealer market if there was a big shift of people selling cars directly. That would change things quite significantly.
I don't understand why that would change things. It's happening today. Customers already today sell their cars privately.
Yes, but if they can't sell it to a dealer,
or if they choose not to sell it to a dealer because they think they can get a better price or a simpler transaction through the online process.
And the purchaser of a second-hand vehicle then would have no warranty attached to a dealership. So that builds risk into the system too, doesn't it?
The warranty is attached to the vehicle. So the vehicle warranty, and we offer currently a 5-year vehicle warranty, that remains attached to the vehicle.
On a second-hand car, though, the
On
warranty
a car
is attached.
That's within that 5-year
But that's
period.
time limited. So if you bought a car that's out of the time limited warranty from you, but it was a second-hand car from a dealer, you actually get the warranty from the dealer.
Look, Senator, there's no doubt we have no interest to let our second car business get out to non-Mercedes-Benz organizations. For that reason, we will work on a professional trade-in mechanism between us and our retailers to keep as many used cars as possible within our network and provide then our customers with all the guarantees, including used car warranties and of course also the service they enjoy from Mercedes-Benz original or genuine service.
Okay. It was reported in the media this year that the Australian Mercedes-Benz dealer body overwhelmingly voted against a shift to the agency model. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so overwhelmingly, can you give me the number?
It was about 90%, just over 90%.
So your dealers didn't want to shift to the retail of the future?
That wasn't, if I may just add to that, they said the model as was presented to them in November last year, they did not want to shift to.
Okay.
And we have done, since November last year, we have done significant changes, also many of them as per the suggestions from our dealers to adapt the model so that it actually aligns much more closely now to the requests from that.
So did you take another vote in February 2020?
We have not.
So your assertion is your view, but not taken by vote?
No, that's correct. We have not taken a vote, but we have engaged with many dealers, both individually and as a dealer group, and we feel comfortable that the acceptance to the current model is significantly bigger because they actually told us in December or November when they did do that vote, the specific items which they didn't like
All
about.
right. And that is your view, but I can let you know that we are receiving significant numbers of confidential submissions because people are feeling that they have a lot of money on the line, they have a lot of business on the line, they have a lot of jobs on the line, a lot of reputation on the line, and they're more inclined to feel that they need to comply with the large and powerful entity that provides them with vehicles rather than fight for what they think they want because they feel rather exposed. So that's my characterisation of the submissions, not just for Mercedes-Benz, but right across the sector. Mr. Horst van Santen, is now, you are on public record stating that Mercedes-Benz would not introduce an agency model in Australia unless a majority of Mercedes-Benz dealers supported the change during discussions.
Senator, that was, let us take back, we started this discussion late 2016, 2017.
Is that when you made that comment, Mr. Van Santen?
I don't recall exactly the time, but it was in the early stages because the whole discussion started actually with our dealers in a conference asking us to consider new ways of selling due to the need for improvement of the customer experience. We then started working locally on alternatives, and by coincidence, at the same time or shortly thereafter, our head office in Stuttgart started to consider alternative sales models. And we volunteered, or we asked for being considered as a pilot market, and we're already in discussions. And at that point in time, we had the strategy, as I always called it, we wanted to create willing participants. That was the term I frequently used.
Okay, so it was your idea, Mr. Van Santen, despite saying that you would not introduce an agency model unless there was Mercedes-Benz dealer support. You advanced an idea around 2016 of a pilot market for this car's retail of the future. And we know that a vote taken in 2019 showed 90% of the dealers not wanting to go ahead. And despite the dealers not wanting the change and you knowing that they didn't want it to happen, you still went ahead with it in February 2020 and advised them the new model will be established by 2022.
Senator, there was a lot of time in between, and that time was not us making up our mind and deciding on a new model independently from our retailers. There was a period between 2017 and 2019 of ongoing working groups with retailers where our retailers constructively and positively contributed to improving the basic idea of a new model.
So my question, Mr. Van Santen, if you had 2 years to consult with your retailers and you delivered them a model in December 2019 where 90% of them rejected it, how do you think you got it so right in the 2 months between December 2019 and February 2020?
Look, I mean,
because that's not what I'm hearing from the dealers.
Yeah, we have to accept that obviously there's always, when you introduce new concepts or a new business model, that there is a likelihood that it will not receive full support.
90% rejecting is more than not full support.
Yeah, but this was 1 year, and we have, as Mr. Nomikos outlined, we have worked extremely hard on all the... With the rejection, we received a list from our retailers of topics that needed to be addressed to consider it in a different way. So it was not an outright rejection from our retailers to say, under no circumstances. It was more a rejection, the way it was presented on that date. We don't believe it's ready, we don't believe it's right. If you can fix certain things, we're happy to reconsider it. And we have extensively worked on those areas, and we believe today that we have a model that is completely different. And in addition to that...
Are you willing to put that to a vote, as you did in December 2019?
We will certainly get the feedback from retailers regardless.
Well, I do question whether you will actually do that, because it's been reported that dealers are actually in fear of recrimination if they publicly comment against Mercedes-Benz and the new model that you're pressing. Do you actually believe that Australian Mercedes-Benz dealers are afraid of speaking out against Mercedes-Benz because they fear their contract will not be renewed? Do you have the capacity to undertake that action, Mr Van Sanden?
We certainly do not have a track record or the capacity or the interest to terminate contracts. We have long-term relationships with our retailers, and we intend to continue that. So I cannot argue if you get reports, confidential submissions with fear of retribution. I can only tell you that we have no such track record, and it is certainly neither mine nor my leadership team's way of doing business.
It hasn't been your practice, is what you've said to me in that response there, but you do have the power to choose not to renew people's contracts with you.
That is part of a contract. Every contract can come to an end, but there is no. Our preferred option is to convince every dealer to come on that new journey with us. And if a dealer, for whatever reason, prefers not to be part of a new concept, and these can be emotional reasons, financial reasons, or other, then we will help them to find an appropriate partner to sell their business at an appropriate price. So we will not simply terminate dealers. That's not how we operate or have ever operated.
Thank you for your answer, Mr Van Sanden. It's been reported that Mercedes-Benz dealers are not satisfied with the current offers because there is no compensation for goodwill or for customer lists. Why is Mercedes-Benz refusing to pay these 53 dealers across Australia for goodwill or for customer data?
I mean, firstly, the change that we are planning to implement only reflects 30% of the average dealer profit. Secondly, our modelling, as Mr. Neuickers outlined, shows us that the average profitability in that new car sales area, which will be affected by the Retail of the Future model, will remain on the same level. With that, our assumption is that the goodwill of our retailers' businesses will also remain the same. And my understanding is that, of course, compensation applies if we cause material damage or if we, for example, go through a wrongful termination. But if we don't cause damage and if we apply or comply with the Franchise Code of Conduct, I don't think there is any reason for compensation.
I might go immediately to the Franchise Code of Conduct and the abject failure that it proved to be when General Motors decided to leave the country and the Minister directed them to engage in arbitration voluntarily, and they chose not to do that. So that is the sort of power that large companies, overseas companies like yourselves, have over Australian dealers, that all the cards are stacked against these small businesses, and they really have to comply with what you decide or give up their business. And your company cannot be mandatorily forced into negotiation. You just have to choose to show up if you want to. That is the reality of the way the code is at the moment, isn't it?
Look, I can't comment on the Holden situation. I can only comment on our situation, and we believe that the code at the moment, and there were a few changes in the last 2 years.
It didn't make it mandatory, though, for you to undertake arbitration.
No, but I mean, there's two things also. One is the culture of collaboration, and the other one is the enforcement of the existing rules and code. And we believe that there is sufficient protection for the retailers. And we are still in a growth period. We want to keep our retailers engaged. We cannot see the need to reduce our network or terminate or not renew dealers. And for that reason, we are concerned about an overregulation in the marketplace because it does reduce flexibility both for the OEM but also for the retailer. So
does it reduce your capacity to haggle? Because really, there's a lot of haggling going on between Mercedes-Benz and your dealer network. You've got plenty of room to negotiate with them. You don't seem to be afraid to haggle, but you're going to protect Australian consumers from the opportunity to haggle by enforcing this change of business model.
I believe negotiations is normal part of business. And
yes, it's called haggling, isn't it? That's what we've been calling it so far today.
If you want to call it that way.
Well, I think it's very interesting, the language choices here, frankly. Australian consumers who go in and try and get a good price and get the benefit of competition are called, their skills are called haggling. Your skills in getting what you want out of your dealers is called negotiation. It's the same thing. One seems to be much more highbrow than the other.
Look,
you want to keep your capacity to haggle?
We have a very good track record also in terms of business success. When I started in Australia, that was 20 years ago, we didn't even sell 10,000 cars. And in the best year ever, we sold nearly 40,000 cars here. So in my time here, we have quadrupled our sales volume.
And that is success, and that has grown jobs, etc. The question is, for Australian businesses who are part of that success, who employ across the sector 56,000 people, it matters that they are able to continue to put money in the hands of those people and have the families that they've supported and come to know in their businesses able to continue in their jobs. And this is a massive change to their model of doing business that's been implemented after a vote of 90% against the model in December 19. Could I just go to what happens if the dealer doesn't sign the new agency agreement? What happens?
Look, as I said, we hope that every dealer will sign it. If a dealer decides not to sign it, despite all the best efforts and the evidence that the model actually should work and is a good direction, then the dealer will have the ability to sell his business. We do have expression of interest from our existing network under the new agency model, without even knowing what the final version looks like, that they want to expand their footprint with Mercedes-Benz. So it is not that everyone is still in that hostile negative corner. There is retailers who start to warm up to the model and who have already expressed interest in growing their share. So that means there would be, and as the goodwill will not be affected due to the profitability modelling.
Can you guarantee that here today, that the goodwill will not be affected?
Senator, I
if there's material damage, do you give your word today that you will compensate the businesses that you forced to change their business model?
I think in business there is little guarantees, and we don't know. There is so much change happening, and we have just lived through an unexpected or unprecedented year, and we don't know what happens next. So we cannot simply guarantee compensation for something which is beyond our control.
And that's why you cannot, neither can you guarantee that goodwill will not be impacted by your change of business model. You are assuming that that's the case, but you're not willing to guarantee that.
If I could maybe add a comment regarding the goodwill discussion. Goodwill in the automotive industry, and I apologize if this is already very clear, is basically a multiple of profitability. That's one of the guiding ways. Retailers, the profitability, as we said, for the change to the agency model, about 30% of today's profitability is the new vehicle sales. Based on the modeling we've done, that 30% of their profitability, we feel, and we have done this not just internally, but with external advice, that profitability on average stays the same.
So if you are so confident in that modelling and that profitability claim that you've just made, are you willing here today to guarantee there will be no material damage, and will you compensate businesses who find that your model doesn't work?
Senator, just to reiterate what Mr. von Sanden said, if we weren't in a year of COVID, and I think COVID really brought to light that things can change drastically, we cannot provide future guarantees of their today's profitability.
That's right, but
So
you are
we cannot-
building that assumption that goodwill will remain into your evidence that you're giving me today and saying that it's going to be fine. You can't say it's going to be fine and we don't know what the future holds in the same sentence.
No, but there's things like force majeure, which obviously the corona epidemic has shown us,
Yes.
which means that we cannot guarantee even today's future profitability. And that's where, again, the entrepreneurial instinct or the entrepreneurial drive of our partners is basically there is a risk and reward element. And in no business that I know of, at least, is there no element of risk.
They carry a lot of risk in terms of their capital investment in
That's
the
correct.
places.
That's
and,
correct.
And I don't know if they believe they're going to get sufficient reward, and that's why we're getting these confidential submissions. If a dealer signs a new agency agreement, what rights is the dealer waiving away? Would you like to take that on notice?
Yeah, I would say.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I didn't hear the question. What rights?
Is the new agent, when you sign the new agency agreement, what rights is the dealer waiving? Thank you. My understanding is of your parent company, Daimler. They recently introduced an agency model in Sweden, and the dealers there insisted on and were granted a safety net to ensure they were compensated if they were negatively impacted by the agency model. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So even though you can't see the unknown future, they got a guarantee in Sweden from Daimler, but that's not a guarantee Mercedes-Benz is willing to give to Australian dealers.
No, we also in our model intend to have a safety net.
Okay, and
Which
what
is
does that look like?
Which is similar to the process in Sweden, whereby if there is a significant change in the sales volume, which is obviously linked to the future margin or commission, that Mercedes-Benz would offer that safety net.
And what is the safety net?
We're still in the process of finalizing it, but we're happy to share it with you once we have.
Is it safe to say that Mercedes-Benz changing to the agency model in 2022 so that there are no current car dealership agreements in place that year, and then you wouldn't have to pay compensation?
We aligned, because we had such a long period negotiating, we aligned basically the contract so that every dealer's agreement is running out at this point in time, and every dealer will be offered a new agreement.
At the same time,
Yes,
for the rollout of the new model.
yes.
And that happens at a time when their contract expires,
Yes.
which gives you the maximum pressure to apply on them. You either take it or leave it, from the way I look at it. Mr. von Sanden, it's good business, but is it in the best interests of the Australian people?
We believe it is in the best interest of a continuation of a strong business partnership with our retailers, the minimal disruption, and we believe it's a professional way to do it. So there is no negative intention in this approach.
Are you saying there's no profit drive amongst your intention there for Mercedes-Benz as the parent company?
For us, there's no profit impact, so to speak.
If there's no profit impact, then, Mr. von Sanden, why will you change the model?
Because we believe it's a better customer experience, and we accept that this can be disputed, because we know that it is a fairer go for our rural partners, and those are the key drivers. And because we know that
This isn't the only way you could adjust your model to better meet the needs of rural Australia. There are plenty of other ways you could go about doing that other than changing everything to an agency model and applying maximum pressure to your network in 2022 for them to sign on to the new model.
there is certain changes we could make. I don't disagree with that, but this is only one aspect. The key driver, as I tried to outline with our best customer experience, is really that we believe the research results from our customers that this is the right way for Mercedes-Benz to go forward. And as always, in entrepreneurial concepts, there might be disagreements, but we do it in the way we think it's right, and it is a sustainable. We try to build a sustainable business model both for our retailers and for us. And we are well aware that without our retailers, we are nothing, and we believe that we continue to need them as the key interface between our end customer and us.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. von Sanden. In July this year, Ms. Seeger, who is Mercedes-Benz Worldwide Head of Sales, warned that any changes to Australia's franchising laws could potentially crush its plans to move to the agency model that you call retail of the future. She also reportedly stated that the agency model would not be introduced into markets where franchise laws made it too difficult. Why does Mercedes only want to introduce the agency model into markets where protections for car dealers are limited?
Look, Senator, I wasn't present what exactly Ms. Seeger said, but I take what you give me here. Firstly, the introduction is also in Europe, and Europe is not one of the unprotected markets. Our decision here is not taken because of the specific nature of the franchising situation here. We will always, in every country, operate compliant with the existing rules and laws. And we have markets where it has been implemented with good success, like, for example, South Africa or Sweden. So we are confident that it is a good model for us. It is a decision. We will comply with the regulations and codes here. And why certain countries don't allow it in their code, I don't know why.
So in the US, we took evidence that in 50 states, the car dealers there petitioned their legislators to make sure that they were able to continue to operate a franchise model rather than any other model, and that they would get sufficient protection against the extraordinary power of multinational companies against small businesses, as sophisticated as they may be. Are you aware of Mercedes-Benz action in the US? Is there any proposal in the US where the laws are strong to introduce your retail of the future agency model?
I'm not an expert in the US situation. However, I am aware of Mercedes-Benz's commitment that the agency model is the preferred business model worldwide, and that the attempt to implement it in every market will be made. And with that, I'm sure that our experts are currently looking at opportunities, to implement it in the US within, of course, their franchise legislation. But I don't have any details on it.
Why is Mrs. Seeger of Mercedes-Benz warning against any changes to laws that could protect Australian businesses when she knows already that Australian Mercedes-Benz dealers are not happy, and 90% of them voted in December 2019 not to change to the model that is being pushed on them in 2022?
Unfortunately, I don't know which comment you are referring to, because I cannot imagine that there was a discussion around trying to find loopholes or any other. It is a very simple approach that we believe it is the right model into the future, and we will implement it wherever possible. I'm not aware
and
what
because it's
exactly
possible in Australia, you are implementing it here, is that correct?
As we do in Europe, as we do in South Africa.
But not in the US?
I don't know.
I think it's a matter of fact from the evidence we received that it's not happening in the US. In the same media report, when Ms. Seeger was asked if the US market was involved in the switch to the agency model, she stated that the US market had, and I quote, "a special franchise law, so we cannot work with this." Is it correct to say that if Australia had regulations that protected dealers from exploitative behaviour, then Mercedes-Benz would have done things differently?
Look, we always operate compliant with the local legislation and laws. And if whatever we do is not possible within our legislation here, then we won't do it.
So the government needs to stand up and protect these businesses, and you would comply with the law?
We comply with every law, but we would miss the opportunity to introduce what we believe is a sustainable, future-proof business model.
And to stop the haggling. In your submission, you state that current government policy and the regulatory environment is adequate and working. You also state Mercedes-Benz has a good understanding of the code. I put it to you, Mr. von Santen, that Mercedes-Benz doesn't want regulatory change, because if they were more favourable in protecting vulnerable Australian businesses, then Mercedes-Benz would actually have to pay compensation for changing the business model. Do you agree with this?
No, I don't agree with it, but that is due to the fact that we still believe that we will not cause damage and we will not create grounds for compensation claims.
Even though you can't foresee the future, you know there won't be any damage. I find that quite interesting. You would be aware of the draft principles for new car dealership agreements the Secretariat has provided to all the witnesses. Would you support these principles being mandated instead of being voluntary?
Our view is basically in line with the view of the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industry, that there have been major changes implemented recently as short as 6 months, and that we would see it too premature to change again or mandate certain things. We believe that with all the changes that happened over the last 2 years, there is sufficient protection, and we would prefer to try that and see gain enough experience before we then move to next steps.
If I can just ask 2 final questions, Chair. How many jobs do your 53 retailers actually have?
It's around 3,000,
And how many apprentices?
around the 230, 240.
Thank you. And how many in Mercedes-Benz Australia do you actually have in your workforce?
We have in the passenger car field 300,
Distributed across Australia?
mainly in Melbourne, in our head office. We do have a very small regional representation of field staff in Sydney and in Brisbane.
Thank you very much. Finally, if the principles that we were just discussing became mandatory, would Mercedes-Benz leave Australia?
We would certainly not leave Australia. We've had an extremely successful history in this country. We have big plans for the future, and we will work with whatever the situation here is and see a lot of potential in this market.
And if arbitration became mandatory, would Mercedes-Benz leave Australia?
No.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your evidence today, Mr Von Sen. I've finished, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your evidence this afternoon.